Hello friends, you're watching Ruslan Belov. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. YouTube is actively suppressing reach for channels covering military analysis, and without your engagement, the algorithm simply won't show these episodes to people who haven't found the channel yet. Thank you. Today is a full day. We'll break down the operation by the guardsmen of the 144th Division on the Borova direction. Something genuinely out of the ordinary happened there. We'll revisit the Borova situation and give an honest assessment of what's actually going on. We'll talk about the strike on Dnipro, including the question of a completely new weapon that appears to have been used. We'll discuss Putin's visit to China and what to expect from it. And finally, we'll unpack what's happening with Belarus, a topic that has exploded across the information space in the last 24 hours. Nuclear drills, closed forests, Zelensky's statements, all of it deserves a calm, clear-headed breakdown. Let's get into it. 144th Division operation, an 8-kilometer deep raid. Let's start with good news, and it genuinely deserves attention. The guardsmen of the 144th Motorized Rifle Division carried out an operation that sounds almost implausible, but objective control footage confirms it, so let's go through it in detail. First, the context. On this sector of the front, Russian units are positioned on the approaches to Oleksandrivka. They tried to enter, failed to consolidate, and pulled back. They're also on the approaches to Korovy Yar. Karpivka was taken several months ago, and since then pressure has been building toward Vovchai Yar, which is literally 3 kilometers away, but breaking through has not happened yet. The line of contact is stable, no dramatic shifts, and in these conditions, a confirmed raid into the village of Rubtsi. Where is Rubtsi? Near Skula. Measure the distance from the current line of contact, and you get 8 kilometers. 8. This is not a 500-meter probe into the neutral zone. This is a deep raid into enemy rear, through territory that the AFU formally controls. But the most remarkable part isn't the fact that the soldiers reached Rubtsi. They carried out a civilian evacuation operation there. A local resident did not want to leave toward Kiev. He wanted to go to territory under Russian control. They came, picked him up, and brought him out. Across 8 kilometers, through a zone where the enemy is theoretically present. How was this even possible? Several factors need to be understood. Korovy Yar is not a hardened strongpoint with reinforced concrete positions. It's an ongoing back and forth. Russian units push in, then the AFU push in. But neither side has managed to establish firm control. Drones are flying constantly, there's monitoring, but dense ground presence exists on neither side. That's precisely what creates the conditions for operations like this one. The second factor, the raid went around Korovy Yar, not through it. And the third, the unit that carried it out was a specialized detachment trained specifically for deep insertion operations. Prepared, coordinated, familiar with the terrain. That's why it came off clean and without casualties. What does this mean tactically? Talking about an actual consolidated foothold in Rubtsi is premature. This was a raid, not a seizure and hold. But the grey zone has now effectively stretched across those 8 kilometers. When a unit can enter a settlement, conduct an operation, pick someone up and walk out without incident, it means there is no dense AFU control along those lines. It simply doesn't work that way. If you're firmly holding ground, the opposing side doesn't just stroll in 8 kilometers, do their business, and walk back out. Now, on the strategic outlook. If Rubtsi can be taken and held in the foreseeable future, it opens up a genuinely interesting picture. Look at it this way. Rubtsi, and there's Izium. Yes, the Oskil River is between them, which is a serious obstacle. But if you establish a position at the right point on this bank, Izium is less than 8 kilometers away. And given the range of modern drones, all logistics running from Izium to Sloviansk would be under constant pressure. That connects directly to the not-so-distant prospect of an assault on Sloviansk, which by some assessments could become a reality as early as next winter. Borova, an honest conversation about fabricated footage. Now, an uncomfortable topic, but a necessary one. Yesterday we analyzed video material about the capture of Borova, and at the time I reported improved positions based on the available footage. Today a correction is needed. Here's the situation. The video was 4 minutes long with many episodes. Out of all the material, exactly one episode was verified and geolocated as genuinely filmed in Borova, on the eastern outskirts. That's the basis on which we made corrections yesterday. However, upon closer analysis, the remainder of the footage turned out to have been filmed not in Borova, but in the settlement of Kolomychika, 20 kilometers away. An important clarification up front, in the interest of honest analysis. This is not AI-generated content, not a fabrication from thin air. The footage is real, the people are real, the situations are real, but it was all filmed somewhere else. It's possible that filming in Borova itself was genuinely unsafe at the time, and part of the episodes were recorded at a rear area location. That's technically explainable, but the fact remains. And the fact says this: when you have genuine, confident, documented control over a settlement, nobody drives 20 kilometers away to film the report about capturing it. There's simply no need. You film where the result is. If you're filming somewhere else and presenting it as footage from a different location, it means either that location isn't safe to film in, or the result as claimed doesn't yet exist. The practical conclusion, expecting a quick, clear-cut capture of Borova anytime soon, appears to be premature. Fighting is ongoing, a penetration occurred, one verified episode exists, those are facts. But Borova fully under control as a confirmed reality, that's not where things stand. We're waiting for new footage. If it appears and can genuinely be geolocated in Borova, we'll revise the assessment, no question. But for now, we hold a cautious position and don't get ahead of confirmed data. Strike on Dnipro. New weapon? Last night, the Russian army carried out a powerful strike on Dnipro. Strikes on this city are not news in themselves. It's happened before. But this time, something unusual is being actively discussed. According to available information, a new type of weapon was used. Not an Iskander, not an Oreshnik, something that hasn't been recorded before. Strike footage has been published. Specialists analyzing the video concluded that the missile split into 3 sub-munitions on approach to the target. This is characteristic of cluster or separating warhead systems, but no specific identification of the system has been made public yet. I'll be upfront about this. I am not an expert in missile weaponry. On questions like this, I rely on those who go deeper. I listen, I read, I analyze what more qualified people are saying. This information seemed worth flagging, so I'm passing it on to you. We'll follow the specialist assessments as more detailed analysis becomes available, and we'll return to the topic when there's something concrete to add. Belarus, nuclear drills, and what's behind it all. Now, the loudest topic of the past 24 hours. In the last few hours, the information space has exploded on several levels simultaneously. Belarus has closed forests in 19 border districts, Zelensky is making pointed statements, and Russian official sources are reporting large-scale nuclear drills. Let's work through all of this calmly and in order. No panic, but no pretending nothing significant is happening either. The facts. First, Belarus has closed access to forests in 19 border districts simultaneously. No detailed official explanation has been given. That in itself is a non-standard administrative move that requires context. Second, Zelensky publicly stated that Belarus is preparing to enter combat operations against Ukraine. Ukrainian sources take the narrative further, writing about a possible entry of Russian forces through Belarusian territory toward Kyiv, analogous to what happened in February 2022 in the opening days of the operation. Third, and this is where you need to read carefully, Russia's Ministry of Defense officially announced that from May 19 to May 21, the armed forces will conduct exercises on the preparation and employment of nuclear forces under conditions of an aggression threat. More than 64,000 military personnel and over 8,000 units of equipment are involved. It was separately emphasized that the exercises will practice joint preparation and employment of nuclear weapons stationed on Belarusian territory. Now, the most important part, how to read all of this. Nuclear drills are not a declaration of intent to use nuclear weapons. They're a regular component of military planning for any nuclear power. Russia conducts such exercises periodically, and the mere fact of their occurrence doesn't mean something detonates tomorrow. You have to distinguish between military routine and an escalatory signal. But there is something meaningful in these particular exercises. The emphasis on nuclear weapons stationed specifically in Belarus is not a random detail. It's a signal directed at specific recipients: Warsaw, Vilnius, Kyiv, Brussels, Washington. A signal that the nuclear component of the Belarusian presence is a real, functional, and actively rehearsed element of military planning. Not a declaration, but an operational instrument. As for the version about a possible offensive through Belarus, maximum caution is required here. Russian forces are unlikely to conduct a large-scale offensive operation in border areas precisely while nuclear drills are underway. That would create an operationally impossible configuration and trigger an immediate NATO response. The logic of military planning doesn't support that scenario. However, closed forests in 19 districts is a real administrative action, not a media rumor. And it requires an explanation. Possibilities: preparation for military maneuvers in the border strip as part of the same exercises. Measures to limit enemy reconnaissance activity in forested areas. Or, it can't be entirely ruled out, some other operational activity whose nature has no public data yet. Bottom line assessment as of now: a situation warranting heightened attention, not panic. Nuclear exercises with a Belarusian component are a demonstration of capability and a deterrent signal. Closed forests are a fact that requires clarification. Zelensky's statements are a political narrative that needs to be cross-referenced against actions on the ground, not rhetoric. We monitor all three levels simultaneously: Putin's visit to China, what to expect, and last for today, but far from least in importance, Putin is in China on an official visit. More than 40 documents are expected to be signed. Ushakov stated this, emphasizing that the documents carry real substance, not formality. For a sense of scale, compare this with Trump's recent visit to China, which ended with virtually zero practical result, plenty of rhetoric, minimum concrete outcomes. The Russian-Chinese meeting is expected to be a fundamentally different kind of engagement. A significant public statement from Putin is planned, reportedly touching directly on the situation around Ukraine and the Iranian direction. The content hasn't been disclosed yet, but given the context, nuclear drills, pressure on Iran, the negotiating process, it's unlikely to be routine. Trump, incidentally, again postponed a strike on Iran today. According to the American side, at the request of friends and partners. A gesture of goodwill, they say. One of several, if you've been counting. Meanwhile, the Iranian direction hasn't de-escalated. Negotiations continue, sanctions pressure remains, the Strait of Hormuz stays in focus for global oil logistics. In this context, the Russian-Chinese talks have a direct bearing on the Iran file. Beijing's position largely determines how far Washington is prepared to push in its pressure on Tehran. We'll follow the outcomes of the visit. As soon as concrete data on the signed documents and official statements becomes available, we'll break it down in full. One last request: if you're watching and haven't subscribed yet, subscribe and hit the bell. YouTube is actively cutting reach for channels like this one, and without a live audience, the algorithm simply won't push it forward. A like takes 1 second and genuinely affects reach. This isn't a formality, it's what determines whether the next episode reaches the people who need it. Thank you all. Until the next episode.